Meuret is our marketing analyst this week. We talked with John on Wednesday afternoon. While wind that day chased us inside, farmers had another day to work at a record-paced harvest.
This is probably one for the ages, but we've seen a lot of corn come off before the soybeans. Generally in this area, we'll almost always do soybeans, finish the soybeans, and go back out into corn. And this year, we've seen a lot of guys do corn, stop and do soybeans, and then go back to the corn. So really pretty good. We're probably 70% done with soybeans as of today, and somewhere around 30% on the corn. So
we're talking at the end of Wednesday afternoon. A little volatile last week. Corn gained back to finished about where it started the week, but what do you attribute that to and how we started this week?
You know, a lot of the gains, I think we were overdone on the downside. I think there was people thinking that we would continue to slide. The end users hadn't really stepped up. And then a couple things happened late last week. I think ethanol caught a bid, which helps in the cash market. And I think there's also the fear that maybe the yield isn't quite as good as we were thinking. And it probably has taken a step up from the 120 or 122. And now we're right back down to probably in that 122 or 123 range.
What do you expect to see next week when the USDA does its crop report?
You know, we're going to see harvested acres come down, and that's been criticized a lot. But I think the yield will be real close to the 123 mark when we get all done. Beans, I think, and we can hit on that too.
Sure.
Beans, we think, climb, and everybody's expecting that. And I'm no different. I think we're going to see somewhere around the 38 or 38 and a half bushel yield, and the market was not expecting that. Now, how can you have the drought of a century and produce 40, 50, 60 bushel soybeans? So it'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see what the government comes out with, and the demand rationing continues.
I've always heard people describe USDA as fun. That is exactly the way that they describe those reports. It's so much fun to see what they come up with. Let's talk about demand rationing. We talked so much about this a few months ago, how people were going to have to ration demand for both corn and beans, and how tough it was going to be. Have we seen much of it going on? Does more need to happen?
We have seen a lot of demand rationing start. I don't think we're finished yet. I don't think people fully understand the extent of this drought, but it has started, and I think we've seen it in several different sectors. Livestock has done some unique things. We've brought in some canola meal for the first time ever in our history, and use that in the rations. And I think that's just one example of how people are going to get creative on how to get through. And so if they're going to continue to feed, I think they've found alternatives, and I think they're going to find different feeds to take place of corn or soybeans or soybean meal. So it has started, yes.
Let's move into ethanol, what you see there over the next month, perhaps, and if there's a shakeup in the elections, maybe how that would change into the first of next year.
You know, I think the ethanol plants are going to continue to run. They've got a place in our business. They've got a place in the nation now. They're going to stay right in there running. Now, the poor plants, the ones that aren't paid down, I think they're going to continue to stay shut down or limited running, and so they might be on 3 months and off 1. But I do think it's going to stay there. As far as the election, you know, I don't think we'll see much change in ethanol policy. The EPA is going to make their decision in the next month, you know, shortly after the election. So we'll find out if they want to waive the mandate or not. We probably don't need to waive the mandate, to be my guess. We see that there's plenty of corn domestically to grind up and feed to ethanol. We're currently not exporting any corn, so you know, if you're not going to feed it to livestock, it's going to go into an ethanol plant. So
overall in the stock market, strong third quarter. Some people are worried though that this is now time for a pullback. If it does in fact pull back, how far do grains go with it, and do they go at all?
You know, that's an interesting subject. In fact, that's one that's really driving our soybean market down today, which is the funds and the index guys are saying, hey, I'm out of beans. And there's really two reasons for doing it. Number one, they already had a run. Number two, we found out the soybean crop's a little bigger. They've really got the same problem in corn. You know, we added a lot of contracts between the beginning of July to the end of August, and now you really have to find something bullish for them to come back in and buy, both in corn and soybeans. So if there is additional buying in the fourth quarter from the fund side, we think it's going to be relatively limited. In fact, there's probably going to be more of a tendency to roll existing positions, which can put some pressure on the front end of the market. So,
as you look towards 2013, how much does South America play into what people should think about doing there?
Well, I think it's everything, and we're coming off again a drought here in the U.S. We all know that. We got to watch South America, and if they have a drought, if they stumble like we did, soybeans are going to run, corn's going to run, because it's more imperative that we get acres planted and that the weather cooperates accordingly. I think about Christmas time will be the key. There's no doubt they're going to have a scare at some point, but if you wake up Christmas and it's hot and dry in South America, that's your Christmas present, because you're gonna go sharply higher. But if they have normal weather, on the flip side, you know, they can grow us out of the bean crop, and I think they can have enough corn and beans back in the pipeline by, you know, February, early March. And so we can kind of satisfy world demand if we need to. And, you know, on the same note, you know, we talked soybeans before and demand. If you have if we take 85% of all the soybeans we grew, they need to be in the pipeline by the end of February. That's a remarkable feat. So when people talk about how tight this really is, that means I've got to go convince a guy to get his soybeans out of a bin if the snow is blowing. So it can be a difficult task on the soybean side.
Let me quickly ask you about basis numbers. Do you expect them to strengthen hard after we get done harvest?
I think basis numbers will continue to stay strong. I don't know if they get much better than this. We've got a lot of funny movements in grain this year. North Dakota is going to move into Nebraska. North Dakota is going to move to Illinois. I think both those moves are going to be a challenge for local basis here in Nebraska. Nebraska is going to hold their own on corn, and it feels like other people are going to come in and take some of our front away. So.